Welcome to the deep dive. You've sent us some really interesting material lately, focusing on how we build our understanding of, well, the human mind and how we learn.
That's right. Specifically looking at theory development in psychology and particularly educational psychology.
Yeah, exactly. So, for this deep dive, we really want to dig into the key ideas about how these theories actually get built, how we figure out if they're any good, and importantly, how educational psychology is contributing to maybe improving psychological science overall.
And it feels like a really timely discussion, doesn't it? Given all the conversations happening right now about, the reliability and impact of research in psychology.
Definitely. Things like the replication crisis, issues around bias.
Right. Concerns about systemic issues like racism, epistemic oppression. It all points to a need for better, stronger theories.
Absolutely. Because ultimately, stronger theories are the bedrock for, well, a more just, effective, and beneficial psychological science.
Couldn't agree more.
So let's get right into it. When we talk about theory in psychology, what are we really, what's the core concept?
Well, fundamentally, a theory is trying to describe how phenomena occur. What are the patterns? What's going on?
Okay, the how.
And sometimes it goes deeper to explain why those phenomena happen. So there's these two key aspects, the descriptive and the explanatory.
Got it. Descriptive and explanatory. Can you flesh those out a bit more? Let's start with the explanatory side.
Sure. So the explanatory part is all about understanding the relationships between things. Like, how does gaining knowledge in a subject influence your confidence in it?
Uh-huh.
Or maybe a theory suggests that boosting someone's self-efficacy, their belief in their own ability, will likely lead to better performance.
Right. Cause and effect, or at least strong links.
Exactly. And theories can also suggest interventions. For example, figuring out how certain kinds of digital learning support might improve student achievement in, say, active learning settings.
Okay, that makes sense. That's probably what most people think of when they hear psychological theory explaining connections, predicting outcomes, maybe suggesting solutions.
It often is, yeah.
Yeah.
But the descriptive side, the what's happening, is sometimes overlooked, even though it's incredibly important.
So tell us more about that descriptive aspect. Why is it so crucial?
Well, good description provides an accurate, useful, and hopefully comprehensive picture of the phenomenon itself. Take Bronfenbrenner's ecological systems theory.
Yeah.
It didn't just explain development. It described these different interacting systems, like the mesosystem connecting home and school, or the macrosystem, the broader culture. It gave us a much richer map.
So it's about really capturing the complexity of what's going on.
Precisely. And sometimes a really good description can reveal things we hadn't even considered, like Schraw and colleagues describing adaptive procrastination.
Adaptive procrastination, putting things off can be good.
Well, potentially yes, in certain contexts. That description challenged assumptions. Or think about Skinner and colleagues detailing the effects of what they called collective mesosystems. These descriptions add nuance.
I see. So a strong description isn't just background info, it can actually be groundbreaking in itself.
Absolutely. It provides the foundation. A really sharp description can force us to completely rethink our understanding.
Okay, so we have describing what happens and explaining why. How do these two work together when someone's actually trying to build a theory? Is it sequential?
They're definitely intertwined. It often starts with observation, with description. You notice something, you systematically observe it, you look for patterns, and you describe the phenomenon you're seeing.
Right.
Only then, usually, do you start developing explanations for why it's happening. Think about Piaget.
His stages of cognitive development.
Exactly. He started by meticulously observing and describing children's errors and how their thinking seemed to change over time. That led to the descriptive stages. Then he proposed the explanatory mechanisms, like equilibration.
So description often comes first, laying the groundwork.
Very often, yes. And like we said, a powerful description can highlight gaps in existing explanations. Think about Bandura.
Social learning theory, Bobodal.
Right. He observed kids learning aggressively just by watching others, without any direct reward or punishment themselves.
Which didn't fit the behaviorist models of the time.
Exactly. That descriptive observation learning, by watching, contradicted existing theory, and basically forced the development of a new explanatory framework, social learning theory. So that observation, that description, was the catalyst.
That's a great example. So when we're doing this work, this theory building, are certain research methods better suited for description versus explanation?
That's an interesting question. It's not really that clear-cut.
Mm,
Theory development can draw on pretty much any research method, qualitative, quantitative, mixed methods.
okay.
We might associate quantitative methods more with testing explanations, but qualitative approaches like, say, grounded theory are explicitly designed to build theory from observations.
Right. Inductively?
And conversely, while qualitative often drives description, quantitative findings can absolutely highlight phenomena. Think about stereotype threat research showing performance drops. That's a quantitatively identified phenomena.
Ah, okay.
And even meta-analyses, which combine quantitative studies, can reveal inconsistencies, heterogeneity, that then might prompt qualitative work to better describe why those differences exist.
So it's really about using the right tool for the job at hand and maybe combining tools.
Precisely. No single method owns theory building. Using diverse approaches usually leads to stronger, more robust theories in the end.
Okay, let's talk about the actual process then. How does a theory typically evolve? Is there like a standard life cycle?
Not really a rigid roadmap, but you can think of it as this ongoing cycle, this iterative dance between description and explanation. You observe something, describe it carefully, propose an explanation, test that explanation, which might lead you to refine the explanation or even go back and refine the description based on what you found. It loops.
Can you break down those loops a bit? How do we get from just seeing something to a solid theoretical description?
It often starts with, well, noticing things, what scientists sometimes call natural history, just observing patterns in the world.
Field work, almost.
Kind of, yeah. Then you organize those observations, look for themes, generalize them into what we call phenomena. These phenomena are the descriptive core. Perry's work on college students and relativism is a classic example.
How so?
He noticed students had very different ways of understanding knowledge and truth. So he did in-depth interviews, analyzed them systematically, and described these distinct positions or stages of intellectual and ethical development.
Right, from concrete to more relativistic thinking.
Exactly. And that descriptive model then fueled a whole new area of research on epistemic cognition, how people think about knowledge itself.
So observe, systematize, describe, generalize. Okay. What about generating the explanations then? How does that work?
That often involves what philosophers call abduction. It's like making an educated guess, the best explanation based on the evidence you have.
Like a detective solving a crime.
Kind of. You propose potential mechanisms, relationships, maybe ways to intervene. Then comes the crucial part, testing those ideas empirically.
Okay.
For instance, research on how people revise their knowledge, maybe exploring competing activation mechanisms in the brain. Does the evidence support that explanation?
And based on the results.
Well, the findings might support the explanation, or they might challenge it, forcing you to revise the explanation, or maybe even go back and question the initial description of the phenomenon itself.
So it really is a constant refinement process. Theories aren't set in stone.
Not at all. Theory revision is key. It's this ongoing epistemic iteration. New findings can really challenge existing theories. Think about the whole digital natives idea.
Prinsky's concept that kids today are just naturally tech savvy.
Right, but subsequent research really questioned that description, suggesting it wasn't that simple. That's revising the descriptive aspect. Or, like we talked about with adaptive procrastination, sometimes new research helps us identify or describe new phenomena that weren't really on the radar before.
Now, what happens when you have multiple theories trying to explain roughly the same thing? Which happens a lot, right?
Oh, absolutely. Vygotsky and Piaget, for instance, both had hugely influential theories of cognitive development, emerging around the same time, but with different emphasis.
Sociocultural versus individual constructivists.
Right. And while that parallel development is normal, it can be confusing for, say, educators or policymakers who need to apply these ideas. Which theory do you follow?
Yeah, that's a practical challenge.
And that's where theory evaluation and theory integration become so important. But interestingly, they often get less attention than theory generation.
Really? Why do you think that is?
Well, maybe it's harder or less glamorous. There's sometimes a tendency, especially in social sciences, to let multiple theories coexist, rather than pushing hard for convergence or deciding which ones are, frankly, better. Kuhn talked about theories just fading away when their proponents retire.
Not ideal.
Not really. We need more systematic ways to assess theories, rather than just letting them drift.
Okay, so how do we systematically evaluate a theory? Are there criteria?
Yes, definitely. Philosophers of science talk about the virtues of a good theory, things that make it strong, useful, desirable.
Like what?
We can group them. There are internal criteria about the theory itself. Its scope, how much does it explain? Parsimony, is it simple and elegant? Accuracy, plausibility, is it testable? Does it offer a clear mechanism? How specific are its claims?
Okay, internal characteristics. What about external?
External criteria, look at how it fits with other knowledge. External consistency, does it align with other established theories? Analogy, is it similar to other successful theories? And crucially, practicality, does it actually work in the real world? Can it guide action?
That's a comprehensive list. Scope, parsimony, accuracy, testability, mechanism, consistency, practicality.
Right, and these virtues can sometimes be in tension. Like, increasing scope might make a theory less parsimonious.
Ah, trade-offs.
Exactly. And the importance of different criteria might shift. Early on, plausibility might be key. Later, testability and accuracy become paramount. And remember, good evaluation depends heavily on having those strong descriptive aspects we talked about earlier. You can't evaluate an explanation if you don't have a clear picture of what's being explained.
Makes sense. And what about theory integration? Taking pieces from different theories.
Integration usually follows evaluation. You assess different theories using those virtues, identify their strengths and weaknesses, areas of overlap, key differences in description or mechanism.
Then?
The goal is often to synthesize the best parts into a new, more comprehensive framework. Hoffer and Pintridge did this when developing epistemic cognition theory. They reviewed and evaluated lots of earlier, sometimes competing, ideas about beliefs about knowledge and built a more unified theory by integrating key elements.
So it's a critical synthesis, not just mixing things together.
Exactly. And maybe it's also helpful to be clear about what a theory isn't.
Good point.
It's not just relabeling something. It's not just creating new jargon without explaining anything new. It's not just a list of factors or categories without explaining the relationships between them.
Or those vague diagrams with arrows everywhere.
Right, those diagrams where everything seems connected but without specifying how or how strongly. That doesn't really count as a strong theory. Rigorous evaluation helps us avoid those traps.
This gives us a much clearer picture of the whole process. Now let's pivot slightly. The source material emphasizes the potential contributions of educational psychology to these broader discussions about theory in psychology generally. It suggests EdPsych hasn't always been central.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. You might think educational psychology dealing with complex learning in real settings would be central, but it hasn't always had that prominent voice in general psych theory debates.
So what specific contributions does it offer? The material highlights two main areas, right?
That's right. First, how it approaches building those crucial descriptive aspects of theory, and second, how it's helping to reconceptualize measurement, especially its ethical dimensions.
Okay, let's start with description. What's unique or particularly valuable about EdPsych's approach here?
Well, it loops back to the importance of diverse, rich observation. If your observations are too narrow, say, only studying weird populations, as the APA has acknowledged has been a problem.
Weird meaning Western, educated, industrialized, rich, democratic.
Exactly. If your observations are limited like that, your theories will be underspecified, potentially biased. Psychology arguably needs a renewed focus on that fieldwork, that natural history, really understanding the phenomena in context before rushing to explain them.
And educational psychology does this well.
It's arguably had to. Because learning happens in complex real-world classrooms, EdPsych has increasingly embraced qualitative and mixed methods, especially over the last few decades.
Because the context demands it.
Perhaps. These methods are great for deep exploration, for identifying nuances, for understanding phenomena in situ. Think back to Perry's work, deriving his developmental model from interviews. Or Green and Yu, using qualitative data to figure out why a quantitative measure of epistemic cognition wasn't working as expected. Even early work like Zimmerman's observations leading to cognitive modeling theory that was essentially descriptive, qualitative groundwork.
So the need to understand practical teaching and learning context push the field towards these methods.
It seems likely, yes. A need to understand the real world, maybe involve practitioners. Methodologies like design-based research, which intentionally iterates between theory and practice and context, also exemplify this. These approaches are better at uncovering potential biases that arise when you only study limited groups.
You mentioned race reimaged research earlier in that context. How does that fit in?
It's a critical piece of strengthening description. Following critiques like the APA's about over-reliance on weird samples, researchers like Decker, Gunby, and Schutz argue that educational psychology needs more research explicitly focused on race.
Why?
Because current theories often lack good descriptive grounding in phenomena crucial to the experiences of racially minoritized groups. things like racial identity development, racial socialization, our observations have been insufficient.
So we need better phenomena detection, as the article puts it.
Exactly. Fong et al.'s study on Indigenous students and belongingness is a stark example. Standard belongingness measures didn't capture their experience. Things like cultural identity were more central. It shows the danger of theorizing without diverse enough observations.
And this isn't just about better science, it connects to broader issues.
Absolutely. It connects directly to addressing historical systemic racism and what's called epistemic injustice, the systemic exclusion of certain voices and perspectives from knowledge creation. And of course, this applies beyond race to other dimensions like culture, nationality, disability, and so on. Homogeneity breeds flawed theory.
Okay, that covers the descriptive contribution. What about the second point, reconceptualizing measurement?
Right. So there's a general call across psychology for more rigor and transparency in measurement, better construct definitions, more detail on how instruments are developed and used.
We talked about the weird sample issue there, too.
Yes, developing instruments on limited samples affects generalizability. Flake and others argue we need better measurement science so we don't just explain away failures to replicate by vaguely blaming sample differences.
But Ed Sykes' contribution goes beyond just rigor. You mentioned ethics.
Yes, and this is really important. The APA apology explicitly addressed the historical misuse of psychological measurement in service of things like eugenics and white supremacy.
Wow, okay.
So there's a need to reject that kind of hegemonic science and adopt a much more ethically aware approach to measurement. Cizek's work on validity is really helpful here.
Oh, so?
He draws a sharp line between score, meaning what a score tells us about the person, and test use, the consequences of how we use that score.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Take the SAT. We can talk about its score, meaning does it accurately measure certain reasoning skills? That's a psychometric question.
Okay.
But the test use question is separate. Should we use SAT scores for college admissions, given known disparities in access to prep resources and potential societal impacts? That's an ethical and policy question about consequences.
Ah, I see. Separating the technical validity from the ethical implications of its application.
Precisely. This separation allows us to critique or reject harmful uses of tests based on their consequences, even if the test has some technical validity in terms of score meaning. We don't have to get bogged down only arguing psychometrics when the use is clearly problematic.
So prioritizing consequential validity.
Yes, this reprioritization is crucial for making measurement more rigorous, sure, but also more transparent, ethical, and ultimately more beneficial.
Those are really significant contributions from educational psychology, pushing for richer description through diverse methods and samples, and a more ethically grounded approach to measurement. Looking forward, what are the key next steps proposed for enhancing theory development across psychology?
Well, the source material argues there's a kind of theory crisis alongside the methodological and ethical ones we've discussed. So moving forward really requires learning across subdisciplines and sharing effective ideas. It outlines 4 main directions.
Okay, what's the first?
Addressing ableism. Similar to the reckoning with racism, psychology needs to confront its historical marginalization of disability scholarship and the resulting homogeneity in samples.
So just like race reimaged research.
Exactly. We need disability-focused and disability reimaged scholarship. Emery and Anderman have made this point within Ed Psych specifically. We need to ask how incorporating the experiences of individuals with disabilities might fundamentally change our existing theories.
Makes sense. What's the second future direction?
Creating a more hospitable climate for theory revision. We touched on this revision, and even discarding theories can feel threatening to researchers.
Yeah, people get attached to their theories.
Naturally. But science progresses through this epistemic iteration. We need a culture where refining, revising, challenging, and sometimes replacing theories is seen as normal, expected, even celebrated as an advance.
How do we foster that?
By being more open about it, modeling it in our own work, publishing not just supportive findings, but also well-justified critiques, evidence that requires revision, even null findings that challenge theoretical assumptions, fighting that file drawer problem.
And having clearer standards for evaluation.
Yes, more explicit conversations about those criteria for theory evaluation and integration we discussed earlier.
Okay, third direction.
Transparency in theory development itself. This parallels the calls for transparency in methods and data.
So open theory.
Kind of. We need more transparency right from the start. How were the initial observations collected? How were phenomena inferred? We need to value that foundational descriptive work more.
Change the incentives.
Exactly. Journals need to welcome it, evaluators need to recognize its importance, and transparency should continue throughout a theory's life. The idea of a theory review article is interesting.
What's that?
An article dedicated to tracing the history of a theory, its generation, iterations, decisions made, paths not taken, evidence that led to changes, documenting the process.
That could be really useful, especially for training.
Definitely. Which leads to the fourth direction,
Which is?
incorporating theory generation, evaluation, and development explicitly into training programs.
Alongside methods training, open science.
Yes, it's all interconnected. You can't really do rigorous, ethical, beneficial research without both strong methods and well-developed theory guiding them. Training needs to reflect that dynamic interplay. We shouldn't teach them in silos.
So really integrating theory and methods in how we train the next generation of researchers.
Absolutely essential for a healthy psychological science.
Wow. This has been a really comprehensive look at theory development. We've covered what theory is, that cycle of description and explanation, how we evaluate and integrate theories, and these really vital contributions from educational psychology around description and measurement ethics, plus these crucial future directions.
It really underscores that getting theory right isn't just an academic exercise. It's fundamental if psychology is going to achieve its goals.
Absolutely. It's the foundation for making a real positive difference. It really makes you think.
Mm-hmm.
Well, considering those historical biases, what other areas of human experience might still be poorly understood because our theories are based on limited observations? What kind of fieldwork do we still need to do?
That's a great question.
Or, on a more personal level, if theory revision is so crucial for science, what personal theories or assumptions might each of us benefit from re-examining based on new evidence or different perspectives? Lots to think about.
Indeed. Food for thought.
Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive.